Right, I decided some time ago, well, not that long ago, maybe a week or so ago, that I was going to do a video specifically about this camera. I've been asked quite a lot on Instagram about what camera do you use. When people see when I post my photographs, they want to know what camera I use, and very often when I tell them, it's kind of met with surprise and incredulity. I don't know why, but anyway, this isn't really a review. I don't want to do that because, well, it's an old camera, you can't buy one new, so there's not much point in that. I'm not really very good at it. In fact, I'm not very good at speaking to cameras and stuff anyway, so I'm probably not the best person to be reviewing camera gear and what have you. Anyway, so what I want to talk about is why I got this camera, how, which is an interesting story in itself, what this camera's like, both good and bad, and ultimately what I want to get across to people. I don't think this camera looks level. Let me just check that. That's better. It's level now. There we go. That's a bit more level. As you can see, I'm not the most professional vlogger in the world. Anyway, where was I? Yes, what I want to try and get across to people is you can actually be getting out with the gear that you need, taking good quality, well, professional quality images for 500 quid or less. And that's everything, not just the camera and the lens, that's everything. Now, I don't claim to be a professional, I'm not, I'm just an enthusiastic amateur. And I'm not claiming that my actual images are of a professional standard or quality. However, with the gear that I use, anybody could get as good as images as you'll see. And I firmly believe that. So anyway, let's talk about this camera. Oh, by the way, I was going to do this sitting around my kitchen table, but then I thought, I'm here now. It's absolutely stunning, beautiful morning. It's cold up here, but it's so quiet and peaceful. Nice rock here to sit on. Why not do it now? So here we are. Right. The first ever decent camera I got, I suppose, was about 20 years ago, and it was a Canon 35mm. What was it now? I've still got it actually. I think it was an EOS 1000. Yeah, I think it was. I think that was right. That was a great camera to start off with. Then about 10 years ago, I got my first DSLR, which was a Canon 400D. Now, it's an entry-level camera. You can pick them up now for less than 40-50 quid. But it was a great camera. Took some great pictures with it. Anyway, last year I decided I wanted to kind of step up a level, and I wanted to go full frame. And when I started looking at what other photographers were using, because I was a bit out of the loop, so I didn't really know what gear was what, you know. And a lot of people, Canon users, were using either the 5D Mark III or Mark IV. Now, I looked at the cost of those cameras and I was like, God, I can't afford that, you know. And even if I could, I can't justify it. I'm not a professional. And then I started seeing the odd video here and there on YouTube talking about this, which is the Canon 5D Mark I, or Classic as they call it now. And everybody was going on about how amazing this camera was. And I thought, well, it's only 12.8 megapixels. That's not much, because I didn't really understand about resolution and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, I did more and more research, so I decided to get one. And another thing that impressed me was the second-hand price of these things. When these were new, they were around about £3,000. I got this, just the body, with a battery grip that was boxed and unused, never been out of the box. 4 genuine Canon batteries, and this particular body belonged to a wedding photographer, and he'd bought this as a backup, and it still had the protective cellophane plastic covers on the LCD screens that you get when it's brand new. There was even one on there, on the viewfinder. Basically, he'd bought the camera as a backup and never ever used it in all those years. So it was effectively a brand new camera. Now, with a battery grip, 4 batteries, the body, and I think it came with a couple of CDs, software and stuff, 235 quid. Yep, 235. You can't even buy an entry-level DSLR for that. The cheapest DSLR will cost you about 400 quid. Even small sort of mirrorless compact cameras will cost you more than that. So that's how I got it, and why I got it. Right, so let's talk about the good things about this camera. First of all, don't worry about the resolution. It's only 12.8 megapixels, and Canon have got if you get the 5DS, that's like 50 megapixels. The Mark IV's 30 megapixels. But you know what? If you're posting stuff on the internet, or even if you want to print sort of anything up to about A3, that's more than enough. It's perfectly fine. I've done A3 prints, A4 prints. I post my stuff on Instagram, on Facebook, side by side with another image from a more modern camera. You can't tell the difference. Well, actually you can, and that's because the colours on this thing are absolutely phenomenal. Basically, what you're looking at when you take a picture of it, that's what colour it is. I've had other cameras in the past where you take a picture and even with no filters or anything, it's a little bit of a colour cast on it, like it might be a little bit blue or a little bit pinkish. This thing, if I take a picture of that rock now, that rock will look the same on there as it does as I'm looking at it. So the colours on this thing are fantastic, and it gives a real sort of, I don't know, kind of a film camera quality to the image. That's how it kind of looks. Can't explain it, you'd have to get one and try it. Now, the lens that I use with it, coupled with it, as you can see, it hasn't got a red ring around it. I can't afford an L lens, and I couldn't really justify one, to be honest. What I have got is an old discontinued Canon 24 to 85mm lens, and I have to say it is fantastic. The quality, the sharpness, everything about this lens is phenomenal. And I got turned on to this lens by a YouTuber called Christopher Frost, who does reviews on lenses. And he reviewed this lens, and he talked about how it's a forgotten hidden gem in the discontinued Canon range. Now, so I paid $235 for that. I think I paid 60 quid for this lens. You can get them for around about 80 quid, the average price, but I paid 60 for this with a proper Canon lens cover, whatever these are called. So already we're well under 500 quid. So if you get a decent budget tripod, you get a carbon fibre one now for like 100 quid. You could be out there taking high quality, really nice pictures for less than 500 quid with a full frame camera. Over the last sort of year or so I've been tempted to upgrade, maybe get a Mark II, but the more I use this thing, the more I think, why? What do I need it for? There's a couple of downsides to it. I mean, some people would say the resolution's a downside. I don't think that's, I don't, it doesn't hold me back. I don't have a problem with the fact that it's only 12.8 megapixels. The screen on the back's quite small, and you don't have live view. Now for a lot of people, especially landscape photographers, that would be like, oh, forget it then. But, you know, the early landscape, I mean, what's the guy's name? He's probably the most famous landscape photographer in the world. Michael Canon. He hasn't got a live view on his really old film camera. And I don't feel it, once you're used to it and you kind of frame your shot through the viewfinder, and you kind of, you get an eye for whether the camera's level just by looking, and you know, you can kind of adjust it, use the level on your tripod. I don't have an issue with it, to be honest. Most of the images that I take come out as sharp as I need them to be. It's only if I mess up, like I don't focus properly or I kick the tripod or something like that, that I end up with a messed up shot. Most of the time they're in focus, sharp. The autofocus on this thing's very good. I mean, that's another thing, it's only got 9 focus points, but I only need 1 when I'm doing landscape. What other downsides are there to this thing? Let me think. I mean, it's quite simple. There's not a massive amount of functions on it by today's standards, but then I prefer that because it's simple, it's easy to use. There aren't a sort of myriad of settings, and anyway, I have it set on manual anyway. Sometimes I'll put it on aperture priority just to give me a ballpark shutter speed, and then I'll switch to manual and sort of shoot either side of that ballpark shutter speed to get the best exposure. But yeah, what are the downsides of it? It's only got 1 card slot. Apparently that's a downside. So far the CF card in this has performed fine. And what I don't do, because these things, the CF cards, as you're probably aware, there's a whole load of pins inside the camera that they slot into. So I've heard stories of the pins bending, and then that's it, basically game over for the camera. But I never take it out. I use the USB port to get the pictures off the camera, and then I format the drive. So I'm not in danger of bending the pins if I don't take it out. I've got a spare one just in case, but I've never needed to take the CF card out of it yet. What are the downsides are there to this thing? The ISO only goes up to 3200, and at that, the pictures are not really usable. There's so much noise on them. If I'm doing indoor shoots, or I do a bit of modelling photography, portrait photography, which I'll probably show some images of at some point, I tend not to go above ISO 500. I'll try and use light, natural light if possible, like through windows, etc. And I use a flash gun. So yeah, I'll try and keep the ISO as low as possible. Anything above 500, and when you start processing an image, you start to see a bit of noise. At 3200, it's just, forget it, there's so much noise on the picture. So that's a downside. It's not a very good camera for low light. What else? It's quite heavy, chunky, it's big. But then all the 5Ds are. Here's the downside of this camera, which anybody buying one needs to be aware of, because for me it's the biggest downside of all, and for a while it drove me absolutely nuts. The sensors on these things are notorious for getting dirty, and I think it's specific to this particular 5D. I think the newer ones, they have a sensor cleaning function where you kind of press the thing and it vibrates apparently. I got that on my 400D. For whatever reason, they didn't put it on this. God knows why. After I'd had it a few months, I started seeing spots, like especially on the skylines and anything that was like a flat colour, like a sky or water. I started seeing spots. I thought, what the hell's that? I mean, you can clone them out with Photoshop, but I started to think, what the hell's that? So, and then I figured out it was dust on the, on the sensor. So I got myself one of them sensor blowers, blew it all off, etc. Apparently you're supposed to take a picture of a white piece of paper, your f-stop up to its, down to its maximum, which is f22 on this, and there were these black spots all over the frame. So I was cleaning it, and I've got the sensor wipes, swabs, blower, everything. I got it pretty clean, but the sensor on this thing gets dirty a lot, and I thought there was something wrong with this camera. I went on YouTube and I went online and I found it's a common problem. There's lots of 5D owners that have that problem. So what I try and do is shoot sort of between f8 and f11 when I'm doing outdoor stuff, and that way you can't really see them that much. You see the odd one, it's easy to clone them out, but if you start shooting sort of between f16 and f22, then any marks on the sensor, any dirt on it, really noticeable on your images. So that's something to be aware of if you decide to buy one of these. But yeah, if you're trying to get into, having a full frame camera, having a pro level camera, you haven't got the thousands of pounds required to get a new one, you can't go wrong with that. Couple it with that lens and you'll have a really good professional level camera. So there you go.